evening, ladies and gentlemen. We apologize for the late start. Trying to get a few extra people seated in here. Welcome. My name is David Carter, and I'm the theater director of Lucerna. Have been for a few years. And it's a wonderful opportunity for me to look at different material, historical and modern material, and see what our students can do. This is the first time since I've been director that we've done a play from antiquity. This play was written nearly 2,500 years ago in Greek and was performed at the Festival of Dionysus, as most of the Greek plays that we still have were performed at in different cities. This play takes place in the city of Thebes, though it was performed in Athens 2,500 years ago. To put that in perspective, think of the Old Testament kind of ended at 600 BC, and then we have the New Testament beginning in 0, or a little bit before that. So this is kind of in that interim period of 450 BC. The play is the third in the Oedipus trilogy, and some of you are remembering back a few decades to high school when we either read Oedipus or Antigone, and they all kind of blurred together. Oedipus is the first in the trilogy, Oedipus Rex, and that's the play in which a king who has 4 children discovers that his wife is actually his mother. When his mother-wife finds out, she hangs herself, and he gouges his own eyes out. That's that great tragedy. This one moves forward a few years when the children are grown. Oedipus is dead. And when he dies, he leaves his kingdom to his 2 sons to rule in successive years. So Polynices will follow Eteocles as king. Eteocles 1 year, then Polynices the next year. The problem is, at the end of the first year, Eteocles decides he doesn't want to give up his throne to his brother and forbids his brother to return inside the gates of Thebes. His brother has married a woman from a neighboring city, Argos. He raises an army there, and they attack his own city of Thebes. And all this happens the day before our play begins. And what ends up happening is that both the brothers fight each other only. Their armies don't fight, and they end up killing each other. So all that remains of Oedipus' family are his 2 daughters, Ismene and Antigone. The problem is that the new king is their uncle Creon, and in honor of the service of Eteocles in defending his city, he forbids Polynices from being buried, which is not a good thing for life in the underworld if you don't get buried in Greek culture. So that is the conflict of the play. It's whether Polynices is to be buried or not. Finally, we, meaning I, changed the setting of our play from ancient Greece to Mexico some 100 years ago. If any of you know Mexican history, the Mexican Civil War occurred in that time, and there are some kind of similar situations with violence and overthrow, and who was going to be in charge, and rebel forces, and separation, the role of the church, and faith and civil society and all those things. So just for kind of a fun theatrical thing, we changed the setting, but not any of the text. So all the text is translation of the original Greek. Welcome to Antigone, our final performance. We're so glad you're here. Have a good day.
Listen. The same blood flows in both our veins, doesn't it, my sister? The blood of Oedipus. And suffering, which was his destiny, is our punishment too. A a sentence passed on all his children. Physical pain, contempt, insults, every kind of dishonor. We've seen them all and endured them all, the two of us. But there's more to come. Now today, have you heard it? This new proclamation which the king has made to the whole city? Have you heard how those nearest to us are to be treated with the contempt we reserve for traitors, people we love?
No one has told me anything, Antigone. I have heard nothing, neither good nor bad, about anyone we love. Not since the battle I mean. And the terrible news that both our brothers were dead. One day, one battle, and fratricide twice over. Each brother laid down his own flesh. The army from Argos retreated last night. I have heard that. Nothing else to cheer me up or depress me further.
Thought you hadn't. That's why I asked you to meet me here, where I could tell you everything without any risk of being overheard.
What is it then? More terrible news? Something black and frightening. I can see that.
What do you think, Ismene? Perhaps you can guess. We have two brothers, both of them dead. And Creon has decreed that a decent burial be given to one, but not to the other. Eteocles apparently has already been buried, with full military honors and all the formalities due to the dead, meticulously observed, so that his rest in the underworld among the heroes is assured. But Polynices, who died in agony just as certainly as his brother did, is not to be buried at all. The decree makes that quite plain. He is to be left lying where he fell, with no tears and no ceremonies of mourning, to stink in the open till the kites and vultures catch the scent and tear him to pieces and pick him to the bone. Left unburied, there's no rest for him in the underworld, no more than here. What a great king on Creon is, huh, sister? It's against us, you realize, and against me in particular, that he has published this decree. And he will soon be here himself to make it public to the senators and anyone who may not have heard it. He isn't bluffing. He means to act, to make it stick. The punishment for anyone who disobeys the order is public stoning to death. So that's the news, and you know it now. The time has come for you two to stand up and be counted with me, and to show whether you are worthy of the honor of being Oedipus' daughter.
Wait a minute, Antigone. Don't be so headstrong. All this is as you say it is. What can I do, one way or the other?
Just say you'll help me. Commit yourself.
To do what? Something dangerous?
Just to give me a hand to lift the body. It's too heavy for me to move on my own.
To bury him, you mean? In spite of the decree?
He is my brother. And like it or not, he's yours too. I won't betray him now that he's dead.
You must be mad. Creon has publicly forbidden it.
He can't forbid me to love my brother. He has neither the right nor the power to do that.
Have you forgotten what happened to our father? Contempt and loathing from everyone, even from himself. That was his reward. And blinded too by his own hand. And his mother-wife, as ill-matched with him as those two words are with each other. She knotted a rope and hanged herself. And now our two brothers, both in one day caught in the same trap, claiming blood for blood and death for death, each one at the expense of the other. We are the last ones left, sister. And what a death is promised for us. More terrible than any if we break the law by defying the king and the power of the state. Think, for a moment, Antigone, please. We are women. That is all. Physically weaker and barred from any political influence. How can we fight the institutionalized power of the male sex? They are in power and we must obey them. This time and maybe in worse situations than this. May the gods forgive me and the spirits of the dead. I have no choice. When you are powerless, wild gestures and heroic refusals are reserved for madmen!
Don't say any more. I won't ask again. In fact, if you were to offer help now, I would refuse it. Do as you please. I intend to bury my brother, and if I die in the attempt, I shall die in the knowledge that I have acted justly. What greater satisfaction than that? For a loving sister to embrace a loving brother, even in the grave, and to be condemned for the criminal act of seeing him at peace. Our lives are short. We have too little time to waste it on men and the laws they make. The approval of the dead is everlasting, and I shall bask in it as I lie among them. Do as you please. Live, by all means. The laws you will break are not of man's making.
I reverence them. But how can I defy the unlimited power of the state? What weapons of mine are strong enough for that?
Fine. That's a good excuse. I'll go shovel the earth on my brother's body.
I'm frightened, Antigone. I'm frightened for you.
Don't be frightened for me. Fear for yourself.
There's a fire burning in you, Antigone. But it makes me cold just to hear you.
I'm not doing it for you. It's for him.
This obsession will destroy you. You are certain to fail.
I shall fail when I have failed, not before.
But you know it's hopeless. Why begin when you know you can't possibly succeed?
Be quiet before I begin to despise you for talking so feebly. He will despise you too, and justly. You can go now. Go! If I'm mad, you can leave me here with my madness, which will doubtless destroy me soon enough. Death is the worst thing that can happen, and some deaths are more honorable than others.
If you've made your mind up, Antigone's madness, just remember, I love you, no matter what happens.
Win back! He heard their singing as if the victory were theirs for the taking! will be victory celebrations today in this city and singing in the streets.
There will be ceremonies of thanksgiving and grateful tears for the end of fighting as the enemy retreats.
Now Creon is to be king, the god's choice, the son of Menecius.
The new king enters to take his throne, the responsibility his alone.
Senators, our country, like a ship at sea, has survived the hurricane. The gods who sent it have navigated us into calmer waters now. I have chosen to summon this assembly because I know I can trust you. Your predecessors were loyal and reliable in King Laius' time, and when King Oedipus, in his exceptional wisdom, restored the fortunes of this city. When tragedy struck him, and his rule was ended, your loyalty to the blood royal was never questioned, and you supported his sons, till they too were brought down, in a single day incestuously murdered, each brother shedding a brother's blood. By that same blood right, as next of kin, I claim the throne and all its power, both city and kingdom. I claim it and hold it from today as mine by right. The depth of his intellect, and the maturity of his judgment, until he is put to the supreme test by the exercise of lawful power in the state. My own opinion is well known. The ruler who fears the consequences of his actions, or who is afraid to act openly, or take the good advice of his senators, is beneath contempt. Equally contemptible is the man who puts the interests of his friends or his relations before his country. There is nothing good can be said of him. Let me make it plain before the gods whose eyes are in every council chamber, when I see any threat to this nation, from whatever direction I shall make it public. No one who is an enemy of the state shall ever be any friend of mine. The state, the fatherland, is everything to us. The ship we all sail in. If she sinks, we drown, and friendship drowns with us. That's my policy. A policy of service to the Commonwealth. I have issued an official state decree concerning the sons of Oedipus. Eteocles, who died fighting for his country and with exceptional bravery. He is to have all the honors and funeral ceremonies customary for a man who died a hero. The other, the outcast, the exile, his brother Polynices, who returned here at the head of a foreign army to destroy his homeland, to burn down the city and reduce the people to a condition of slavery or kill them in the streets. I have ordered that he is to have no grave at all. No one is to bury him or mourn for him. His body is to be left in the open, uncovered, a stinking feast for the scavengers, dogs, and crows, a sight to inspire terror. I intend to make it quite plain that never, under my administration, will people who commit crimes against the state reap any benefit from their actions. But people who serve the state, alive or dead, that makes no difference. I shall honor them for their patriotism.
You are king now. You have delivered your verdict upon the man who protected the city, and the one who attacked it unambiguously.
The full power of the law is in your hands. It binds the dead as well as for the living.
We are all at your disposal.
Make sure then that my orders are carried out.
Younger men than us should implement your policies.
I don't mean that. Polanike's body is already under guard.
What else must we do?
What other responsibilities do you lay upon us?
Not to intrigue with dissidents or subversive elements.
We are not mad, sir. We know the law and the penalty for breaking it.
Which will be death. And be in no doubt, I shall enforce it. Because there are always men who can be bought, who will risk anything, even death, if the bribe is large enough.
Lord Creon, sir, if I can hardly speak for lack of breath, it's not because I ran. I kept on stopping, as a matter of fact, half a dozen times, and I hung about as much as I dared. I haven't thought about anything so much for such a long time. Listen, don't hurry, I said to myself. The chances are, poor sod, you'll cop it when you get there. But then I said to myself, you see, hang about, I said. Or rather don't, because if Creon hears this from somebody else, you're really in trouble. So I hurried here, as slow as I could, going round and round in circles in my head as well as with my feet. It's funny how long a mile can take you when you're thinking what I was thinking. However, duty called in the end, and I reckoned it would be safer to face it out. So I've come here, and it may be unimportant, but I'll tell you, if I'm punished for it, the gods will be behind it, so I wouldn't have escaped it anyway.
Talk sense, man. Why are you here?
Well, first of all, sir, for myself, like my own point of view, I never done it, and I didn't see who else done it neither, so I shouldn't be punished for it, should I?
Is there any need for all this preamble? You take great care to dissociate yourself from what you say. It must be bad news.
It is bad news, sir, and I'm so scared I don't know how to put it for the best.
The plainest way, and then we can have done with you.
Straight out of it, then. The body's buried. It's someone or other. A handful of dust. That's all. Dry dust, but properly sprinkled. You know, religiously. And then gone, whoever it was.
Do you know what you're saying? Who has dared to disobey my orders?
No way of knowing, sir. We've no idea. There had been no digging, no spade marks or nothing. The ground's rock hard. There was no wheel tracks either, none of it chariots or carts or anything. In fact, no clues of any kind at all to tell you who might have done it. When the sentry, taking the early turn, discovered what had happened and reported back, we were all shattered and scared stiff. It was as if the body had disappeared. But not buried in a proper grave, I don't mean, but lightly covered with a layer of earth. It was almost as though some passing stranger, with a religious turn of mind, knowing that being left unburied means everlasting anguish, and wandering without rest had scattered a few handfuls. There was no tracks of animals either, not of a dog or anything that might have gnawed at it or covered it with their front legs like they do a bone. Oh, real rouse started then, I can tell you. We shouted at each other, and it could have been a fight. There was no one there to stop us. Any one of us could have done it, and we all suspected each other, but we all denied it. And there was no evidence to prove one man guilty rather than another. So we all dared each other to swear, to go through fire and water, to hold red-hot pokers in our hands, and call all the gods as witnesses that we hadn't done it, and didn't know anyone who would, or would even think of it, let alone do it. None of any of it got us nowhere. But then, one of the fellas had his say, and he scared us all shitless. He said, and we knew he was dead right. There was no way out of it. We had to do it and take our chances. This feller said, one of us lot must tell the king. We can't just hide it, can't we? That's what he said, and we knew he was dead right, so we decided we'd have to take our chances and draw lots. Just my luck, I drew the short straw. So here I am. And I don't like telling it one little bit more than you like hearing it.
My Lord Creon, this policy of yours has worried me from the start. My wisdom tells me that this might be some sort of warning or sign, and perhaps from the gods.
How dare you? And you! If you are a superannuated fool, at least don't talk like one. Is it likely, remotely likely, that the gods will think twice over that pile of sticking meat? By God, it's blasphemy even to suggest that they would care a damn whether he was buried or not, let alone grant him an honorable funeral, as though he were one of their principal supporters. The man who came to burn down their temples, plunder their treasuries, pull down their statues, and bring contempt for their land and its laws. Do the gods love criminals these days? No, they do not. But, gentlemen, there are men in this city, and I have noted them. A subversive faction, enemies of the state, a cell of oppositionists, call them what you will, who reject the law in my leadership. They meet in secret, and nod, and whisper their seditious talk, and they are behind this. Any fool can see that. Their bribery has suborned my soldiers and paid for this demonstration against my authority. Well, whoever they are, these men who have sold themselves, they'll find the price considerably higher than they thought it was. You, come here. Get this into your head. By Zeus, my God, whose power I revere, I swear to you, soldier, that either you will find the man who buried Polynike's body, the actual man who covered the earth, no other will do, or you, soldier, will die for it. And death, I promise you, will be the least of your punishments. You will be made a public example, kept standing, beaten across the feet, the whole repertoire of special techniques at which we excel so much, until you confess the full conspiracy of this crime. Who paid you? How much? And for what purpose? The choice is yours, and perhaps that indicates where your own best interests lie. Crimes against the state and its laws, you'll find, are very unprofitable in the end.
Am I allowed to speak, sir?
No. Why should you speak? Every word you say is against me.
Sir, Sir.
If you fail to find this enemy of the state and bring him here to me, you'll find that money, from whatever source, will certainly not save your life.
Sir, I didn't cause that heartburn, as it were. It's the criminal causing that, sir, not me.
You're short of a quick answer.
Maybe, but I didn't bury the body. Not guilty to that, sir.
But maybe you were guilty of selling your eyes for money, eh, Sentry? Of looking the other way for silver?
Maybe. No, I swear I didn't. But doesn't matter. Let's hope they find him. If whoever he is. But one thing I'm sure of, they won't find me. I've had an amazing stroke of luck. And I never thought I'd get out of here alive, but when I do, nothing will bring me back again. I won't chance my arm a second time.
The wind is almost swift or more mysterious than the mind and tongue of man, their master. We were within his house against the hail and rain, and he fashioned laws for men to bind together. Oh, may
But wait,
I can't believe my eyes.
This is Antigone. I recognize it as clearly as I can see you.
Her father's destiny was suffering and pain, and all his progeny misfortunes reign.
Child, do you openly disobey the new king's order and bury your brother?
Do you have to manhandle her this way?
We saw it, actually burying the body. Caught him in the act, as they say, red-handed. Only, it's not a him, it's a her. Where's the king?
Coming now. He's most needed.
What's all the noise? By the look of things, I'm not here a moment too soon. What has happened?
Lord Creon, I reckon it's always unwise to swear oaths and make promises, even to yourself. Second guesses 9 times out of 10 end up by calling you a liar. It's been no time at all since I promised myself I wouldn't be seen dead here again. You were that angry with me last time, and a right mouthful you gave me. More than enough, thanks very much. But you can't beat a real turn-up for the books, can you? There's nothing better than a good win when you're expecting a tousing. This girl is your criminal. We saw her do it, actually setting the grave to rights. I brought her here, and there was no panic this time, I can assure you. No recriminations or drawing lots. This job was all mine. I take the credit for it. So now, she's all yours. Take her, accuse her, stone her to death if you like. By rights, I'm free to go and well shot of all of it.
Where did you arrest her? Tell me the details.
Sir, she was burying the body. What else is there to say?
Are you out of your mind? Do you realize the implications of what you're saying?
Sir, she was burying the body. We saw her do it. The body you ordered not to be buried. I can't speak plainer than that.
Did you catch her in the act? Did you see her doing it?
Well, gentlemen, it was like this. As soon as I got back, remembering all those threats and promises you gave me, we brushed all the dirt off the naked body, which was wet and beginning to decay by now, and we set him on the ridge, well to the windward of the stake, and we kept a sharp eye out, ready to nudge anyone who dropped off and tear him off a strip too. For hours we sat there till about midday. The sun was smack overhead, blazing down, and the heat was something terrible, I can tell you. And suddenly, it was as if a whirlwind blew up. Definitely a twister it was, but localized like. And it raised up a dust storm, which swept across the plain, tore all the leaves off the trees, blotted out the whole sky, and completely blinded us. It seemed like some terrible manifestation of the gods, and you had to shut your eyes to endure it all. And suddenly it stopped. And when we opened our eyes, we saw this girl standing there, over the naked body, screaming and cursing the monsters who had done such a thing. Us, of course. She was over the body and sort of wailing, as if she were in pain or maybe agony. Like a bird who returns to the nest, finds all the eggs smashed or the fledglings gone. That's what it sounded like. She crouched over it and sprinkled the dirt all over it. She carried an urn and a small ceremonial bronze thing. She poured from it 3 times on the naked body. Honey and wine and stuff in it, I suppose. All the proper ritual for a funeral, anyway. As soon as we saw that, we came charging down and arrested her on the spot. She wasn't scared or anything. She stood her ground. So then we formally charged her with the crime. This and the one before. She admitted she'd done them both, and we were relieved to hear that, I can tell you. But sorry, too, at the same time. It's nice when you get yourself out of trouble. Not so nice when you have to bring someone else up to the neck in it. Someone you've got no quarrel with. But still, your own life comes first, and I reckon you have to look after number 1.
And you with your head down, what do you say to this accusation? Do you admit it? Are you guilty or not?
Yes, I'm guilty. I don't pretend otherwise.
You soldier, get out. You're cleared of all charges and free to go back to your unit. Now tell me, a simple yes or no. Did you hear of my order forbidding burial?
Of course I heard it. How could I not?
And yet you dared to disobey the law?
Yes, I did. Because it's your law, not the law of God. Natural justice, which is of all times and places. Numinous, not material. A quality of Zeus, not of kings, recognizes no such law. You are merely a man, mortal like me, and laws that you enact cannot overturn ancient moralities or common human decency. They speak the language of eternity, are not written down and never change. They are for today, yesterday, and all time. No one knows where they came from, but every man recognizes their force. And no man's arrogance or power could make me disobey them. I would rather suffer the disapproval of men than dishonor such ancient truths. I shall die someday whether you make laws or not. If my death comes sooner rather than later, I shall welcome it. My life has been misery, is misery now. I shall be more than happy to leave it. There will be no pain and no despair in that. But to leave my mother's son out there in the open, unburied, that would have been unendurable. I could not have borne it. Yet this I shall endure. By your judgment, of course, I'm a fool. But by mine, it's the judge, not the accused, who's behaving foolishly.
This is her father speaking.
She won't give way, letting with the whole power of the state against her. Well, we shall see. Any man can be broken, and often the most committed and determined to break soonest. Even iron, you know, left lying in the fire too long, becomes over-tempered and will snap as soon as a little pressure is applied. You can break it in pieces. And the wildest horse, in the end, submits to the bit and halter just like the rest. This woman is very proud. That was obvious in the first place when she broke the law, and is even clearer now. She glories in the crime she has committed, and insults me to my face, as well as ignoring my decree. If she is allowed to flout the law in this way, all authority in the state will collapse. I will not have that. There will be no exchanging of roles here, me playing the woman while she plays the king. She is my niece, my sister's child. But I am the law, and that responsibility is above kinship. Were she even closer, the closest, my own daughter, my duty would be plain. The law has its weapons, and they will strike at her, and at her sister too. Her accomplice, I've no doubt, in this illegal act to the full extent of the punishment prescribed. The other one is Mamie. Bring her here. I saw her in the corridor, sobbing emotionally like a mad woman. Guilty consciences, you see, can never be hidden completely. The human face reveals conspiracies before they are enacted again and again. But there is nothing more disgusting than the confessed criminal who tries to justify his own actions, as this woman has done here today.
What more do you want? Kill me and have done with it.
More than your death, that'll be enough.
Then what are you waiting for? Nothing you say will be of the slightest interest to me, and my arguments you will not listen to. I've done what I said I'd do. I've buried my brother. I aspire to no greater honor, and if I am to be famous, let it be for that. All these senators of yours, they all agree with me in their hearts. But there's no gad-like terror, is there, gentlemen? And tyrants must have their way, both in word and action. That's their privilege.
You are quite mistaken. None of the Thebans anywhere in the city thinks as you do.
They all do, but they keep their mouths shut when you're here.
Not at all. And you should be ashamed, setting yourself up against the majority, disregarding the will of the people.
I love my brother. I honor him dead as I loved him living. There is no shame in that.
And the one he murdered? Wasn't he your brother?
My mother bore them both, and I loved them both.
If you honor one, you insult the other.
Neither of those dead men would say that.
Eteocles would. His brother was a traitor. Does he merit no greater respect than that?
But he was not an animal. They both died together. And they were both men.
Yes, and the one died defending his country, while the other traitorously attacked it.
The dead have their rights. And we have our duties towards them, dictated by common decency.
And if good and bad are to be honored equally, where are our values? Patriotism, civic duty.
Death is another country. Such things may not be valued there. May even be crimes.
An enemy is an enemy, dead or alive.
No. I have love enough to share. No hate for anyone.
Very well. Share your love, by all means. Share it with the dead. I wish them well of it. Women must learn to obey as well as men. They can have no special treatment. Law is law and will remain so while I am alive, and no woman will get the better of me.
Look, sisters. Look, senators. Is Many weeping for her sister.
And you, snake, slithering silently about my house to drink my blood in secret. Both of you the same. I looked the other way, and like terrorists, you laid undercover plans to destroy me. Well, do you two confess your complicity in this crime, or protest your innocence?
Yes, I confess. If she will allow me to say so, I was fully involved, and if she is guilty, so am I.
No! That isn't justice. When I asked you for help, you refused me. And so I told you I didn't want you. I'd do it alone.
Please, my sister, don't despise me. Let me share the honor and die with you.
You've no right to claim the honor for doing what you were afraid to do. One death will be enough. Why should you die?
Because life without you won't be worth living.
Ask Creon to protect you. He is your uncle.
Do I deserve such contempt? Do you enjoy making fun of me, sneering at my misery?
You're right. It's a reflection of my own pain if such bitter pleasures are all I have left.
Let me help you then. It's not too late.
Save your own life. Do that for yourself, without any criticism from me or envy.
I wasn't afraid to speak. I warned you that this would happen. I knew how it would be.
And the majority would agree with you. But some would be of my opinion.
But we're both in the wrong and we're both condemned.
No. You must live. I have been dead for a long time, inwardly. I am well suited to pay honor to the dead and die for it.
These women are neurotic. Lunatics, both of them. One of them going off her head before our eyes, the other one born unbalanced.
Well, are you surprised? Anyone would crack. The most tough-minded person under such treatment.
You lost your senses when you allowed yourself to be influenced by her lunacy.
There's no life for me here. Not without my sister.
Don't speak of her. She's as good as dead.
Will you kill the woman your son plans to marry?
There are other women.
But they are devoted to each other. You cannot change love as you change your clothes.
No son of mine can marry a criminal.
Oh, Haman, when you hear how your father insults you.
Let him hear. What does his mistress matter to me?
Lord Creon, you insult your own. They are formally betrothed.
Will you tear the woman from your own son's arms?
Death parts all lovers, sooner or later.
If that's how the land lies, the poor child's doomed.
Her death warrant, sealed and delivered.
By you, gentlemen, as well as by me. You heard the order, agreed to it, if only by your silence. Did you not? Before the criminal was known? We'll have no more of this. Take them away, lock them up, and keep them under close guard. It's time they understood they are women and their proper place in this society. There's nothing like the immediate threat of death to soften up their rhetoric and make them look reality in the face.
They call themselves lucky, the fortunate few who live their lives through never drinking from the bitter cup of pain. But when one unlucky family incurs the god's malignity from generation to generation, they must swallow the bitter potion again and then again. Just as rollers crash, and sea spray whips on an exposed beach, and dark clouds lower, and the gale from the north screams through frozen lips.
On every descendant of the ancient line of Labdicus, divine and merciless retribution falls. In the unremembered past, some unforgiving Olympian cast the weight of his vengeance on the whole race, so that agony, destruction, disgrace, destroy son and daughter, and darken their halls with tragedy.
The cold hands of the dead reach out for the living, and no one is spared. A new generation sheds its blood. New light is snuffed out. The
young bared for the same bloody axe. The characteristic sin of Oedipus, arrogance, brings its bleak harvest in.
For Zeus is all-powerful. He never sleeps as man must sleep. In time, which bears its mark on fair complexions and dark, he never engrace his face, or dim the brightness of his palace, for the gods keep their ageless court at the utmost peak of sublime Olympus.
Zeus is master there, and well did that wise man speak, who said that past and future times he holds in his hand by right, and that those who climb in their greatness or wickedness beyond the permitted height, he brings to destruction and despair.
But all men hope, and some have ambition. Far-ranging birds that never tire. Those winds bear some men steadily onward, but some others aimlessly swoop and glide down to frivolous pastures, landscapes of obsession, pathways to disaster, and the merciless fire. And no man can claim to have understood hope or ambition, till the flames burn under his feet, and the one solid wood of his life is reduced to its last condition, ashes and dust.
A wise man said, from out of the depths of his inspiration, when a man commits crimes and is proud of the action, a flaming sword hangs over his head, no future but the grave, and a funeral urn.
Creon, here comes your youngest son.
Is he overcome with grief over the brutal denial of his future bride, all of his hopes of happiness gone?
For the last year's sons, what relief of his consuming fears in the bitter penance of tears?
Does he come to beg for mercy for his beloved Antigone?
I shall know that from his own lips, without any need of fortune tellers. My dear son, I don't doubt you have heard the news of our final decision, the condemnation of the woman you intend to marry. You come here, I hope, not in any spirit of anger against your father, but understanding that we are always comrades and my love for you is unshaken.
I know I am your son, Father. I understand the depth of your experience in matters of state, and I try to follow and benefit from it whenever I can. Any marriage would be worthless to me that did not have your approval and love.
Good fellow. Hang on to that. A father's opinion should always be influential with his son, and fathers with young sons, when they pray for them, ask especially that they should grow up to be loyal, obedient, under pressure the first to strike at their father's enemies, just as they are the first to support his friends. A father whose son yield no such profits from the investment of his parenthood breeds grief and sorrow for his offspring, and becomes himself a figure of fun, especially to his enemies. Don't be taken in, boy. Don't let any woman ensnare you by exploiting her sexuality or any of the attractions that lure infatuated men into submission. Passion never lasts. In a cold bedroom breeds cold hearts, anger, and bitterness, for there's no hatred so violent as the hatred of two people who were once in love. This girl's an enemy. No good to you or your best interests. Spit her out like poison. Let her find herself a husband that suits her among the dead. Don't deceive yourself. She has been openly apprehended, performing a criminal act against the state. She is a confessed traitor, and if I were to spare her life, I too would betray the state and its law and everything I stand for. I will not do it. And she must die. Let her pray to Zeus till she drops. Let her assert she stands for family love and ancient virtues and all the rest of it. If I tolerate treachery in my own house, under my very nose, how can I crush subversion anywhere else in the city or in the state at large? A man who rules wisely within his own family will be equally firm in power. His wisdom will be equally remarkable, whether as king or indeed as subject. In times of war and national danger, he will be the man you can rely on, fighting beside you in the front rank when the battle becomes critical. Anarchy, disobedience, indiscipline. What greater scourge than that for mankind? States collapse from within. Cities are blown to rubble, efficient armies are disorganized, a potential victory turned to disaster and carnage, and all by indiscipline, anarchy, disobedience. Whereas the well-drilled regiment that asks no questions, stands firm, asks nothing, knows nothing, and needs to know nothing, and wins. thus saving the lives of millions of honest people. Authority is essential in any state, and will be upheld in this one by me.
Father, the most enviable of a man's gifts is the ability to reason clearly. And it's not for me to say you are wrong, even if I were clever enough or experienced enough, which I'm not. But it's also true to say that some men think differently about these things. And as your son, my most useful function, it seems to me, is to keep you in touch with what other people are thinking, what they say and do, and approve and disapprove of, and sometimes what they leave unsaid. The prospect of your disapproval is a great silencer of most men's tongues, and some things are never said for fear of the consequences. But I can sometimes hear what people whisper behind their hands. And everywhere I hear sympathy expressed for this unfortunate girl, condemned as she is to a horrifying death that no woman has ever suffered before, and unjustly in most people's eyes. In burying her brother who was killed in action, she did something most people consider decent and honorable. Rather than leaving him naked on the battlefield for the dogs to tear at and kites and scavengers to pick to the bone, she should be given a medal for it, those same people say, and her name inscribed on the roll of honor. Such things are whispered in secret, Father, and they have reached my ears. Sir, your reputation matters to me as much as your good health and happiness do. Indeed, your good name matters more. What could a loving son be more jealous of than his father's reputation? And what could please a father more than to see his son's concern that people will think well of him? Then let me beg you to have second thoughts and not believe that your own opinion is the only right one and that all men share it. The man who believes he has the monopoly of wisdom, that what only he says and what he thinks is of any relevance, reveals his own shallowness of mind with every word he says. The man of judgment knows that it is a sign of strength, not weakness, to value other opinions and to learn from them. And when he is wrong, to admit it openly and change his mind. You see it when a river floods, the trees that bend survive, and those whose trunks are inflexible are snapped off short by the weight of the water. And a sailor in a storm who refuses to reef his sail and run with the wind is likely to end up capsized. I beg you, Father, think twice about this. Don't let your anger influence you. If a man of my age may lay some small claim to common sense, let me say this. Absolute certainty is fine, if a man can be certain that his wisdom is absolute. But such certainty and such wisdom is rare among men. And that being so, the next best is to learn to listen and take good advice when it is offered.
Am I expected to listen and take lessons in political tactics at my age from a mere boy?
I'm a man, Father, and my arguments are just. They stand upon their merits, not my age.
They stand upon their merits, do they? What merit is there, please tell me, in breaking the law?
If she'd done something shameful, I wouldn't defend her.
She brought the law into contempt. That's shameful.
Listen to the people in the street, Father. The ordinary Thebans, they say she hasn't.
I've never based my political principles on the opinions of people in the street.
Now you're the one who's speaking like a boy.
I'm speaking like a king. It's my responsibility, and I will act according to my own convictions.
When the state becomes one man, it ceases to be a state.
The state is the statesman who rules it. It reflects his judgment, and it belongs to him.
Go and rule in the desert then. There's no one there to argue with you. What a king you'll be there.
You damned impertinent devil. Every word you say is against me, your own father.
I plead for you and for myself, for common humanity, respect for the dead.
You will never marry that woman. She won't live long enough to see that day.
If she dies, she won't die alone. There'll be 2 deaths, not one.
Are you threatening me? How dare you threaten me?
No, that's not a threat. I'm telling you your policy was misbegotten from the beginning.
Misbegotten? Dear God, if anything's misbegotten here, it's my son. You'll regret this, I promise you.
If you weren't my father, I'd say you were demented.
Don't father me. You're a woman's plaything, a tame lapdog.
Is anyone else allowed to speak? Must you have the last word in everything? Must all the rest of us be gagged?
I must, and I will. And you, I promise you, will regret what you have spoken here today. I will not be sneered at or contradicted by anyone. Sons can be punished too. Bring her out the bitch, let her die here and now, in the open, with her bridegroom beside her as a witness. You can watch the execution.
That's one sight I shall never see. Nor from this moment, Father, will you ever see me again. Those that wish to stay and watch this disgusting spectacle in company with a madman are welcome to it.
Creon, an uncontrollable fury has possessed your son and swept him off like a whirlwind.
A young man's anger is a terrifying thing.
Let him go, and shout his head off about moral this, indecent that, till he raves himself senseless. The 2 women are sentenced. It will take more than bluster to reprieve them, I promise you.
Both of them, sir? You mean to put both of the sisters to death?
No. You were right. I can take advice. The one who covered the body, not the other.
And for the condemned one, what matter of death?
Take her to some lonely place, rocky and unfrequented by anyone. Find a cave and wall her up in it. Bury her alive, but with just enough food so that no guilt for her death will fall either upon us or the state. Let her honor the gods of the dead there. Since they receive so many of her prayers, they can release her. But she will learn that worshiping the dead is not the business of the living.
When the god of unbridled passion makes war, he always wins, and no force can withstand his powerful, merciless hand.
When the first flowers appear in a young girl's cheek, the remorseless magic begins.
And then, from the deepest valley to the highest peak, his traps are set, and no man's sins or virtues can keep him from the net.
The mania is universal. The gods themselves run mad.
Men lose their wits, and no one is spared.
What else could provoke such strife between father and son? This family divided and murderous anger between kin.
There is fire in a woman's eye. Incited by such consuming heat, a man's mind can be burned.
Aphrodite shares power with Zeus. Her seat is at his right hand. Her lightning strikes to the heart and in power is frightened.
My eyes will have their way in weep, seeing Antigone, like a young bride going toward bedchamber, to marry the dead and snare their everlasting sleep.
In all my wanderings, gentlemen, this place has been my home. I was born in this city, and now I begin my last journey. I look up at the sun in its familiar sky and feel its warmth on my face only to say goodbye. In the daytime of my life, in mid-breath, the security policeman, Death, arrests me as he arrests everyone, young and old. No wedding for me. No music, no guests in the room. My wedding gift is eternity in a stone tomb. My dowry forever not to be. Death, my bridegroom.
But your action is famous.
In every street, mouths whisper, Antigone.
You go down to the dead with the promise of glory ringing in your head, and nothing to devalue your beauty.
No sword has scarred you, plague visited.
Unmarked, untouched, you pass from the dangerous light into the safety of eternal night, alive, alone, and free.
Do you remember the sad story of Tantalus' daughter? She was a stranger from Phrygia, unmarried like me, in danger like mine. She was sentenced to die on the rock of Sepilus, and there was no glory for her. Only the endless shock of the elements and the terrible place where she was imprisoned. The mountains embraced like fingers of ivy, tying her down, enclosing, entombing her, and she all alone, while the freezing rain ripped her to rags and exposed her pain to the naked sky. What bitter tears she shed as she slowly turned to stone, and the gray rock petrified her by inches and she died. Her story is mine. Today, I shall share her rocky bed.
But she was a goddess, not born for death like a son of men whose death with mortality is their only certainty.
Will it soothe your pain to share her destiny, or soften your distress, as alive on earth you draw your last breath to live on in legend and stone?
This is a mockery. By everything the city of our fathers has ever held sacred, you landowners, you elder statesmen, you rulers of thieves, my dying is no joke. Am I a figure of fun, to be treated like a child, insulted and humiliated as I leave you forever? Then forests and meadows and our Theban river, glittering pathways ceaselessly flowing from Dirce's death till now, flatlands thundering beneath our chariots, you must be my witnesses, my only friends and mourners, as victimized by an unjust law. I go to my last home in the living tomb, to wait while the slow darkness descends, cold and starving on my stony bed.
halfway between the living and the dead.
No one has ever dared to go so far before as you have dared to go.
But now you have stumbled. Stub your toe and will shortly shed your blood on the marble staircase of the law.
You carry your father's crimes like a millstone on your back. A small wonder in such times if the bones bend or break.
Nothing more painful than that. The remembrance of my father's long agony and the curse on my suffering family from the beginning. So much grief from the unlucky chance of the son finding the mother's bed. And worse than anything, the benighted offspring of that unspeakable marriage. And I with the others share that terrible destiny. Conceived in incest, no repentance can soften the punishment. The years pass, the agonies increase, and there's no pity for our tears. No marriage for me for certain. I shall close that book forever as I meet my father and mother in the shades. Marriage to the woman of Argos finished my brother and finished me too. One death breeds another.
To pay respect to the dead is praiseworthy, an act of love, and religion must have its due.
But no civilized state can eschew authority. Laws must be obeyed, whether we approve or disapprove.
If you refuse to sanction the power of the state by indulging your obsession, you connive at your own fate.
Spare me your sympathy. Weep no false tears. I know the path that I must follow, to the sunless country of eternal sorrow, the bleak waters of eternity, the unimaginable years. I shall go alone and in silence to my house of stone.
If death could be prevented by singing arias about it, or other self-indulgent displays of grief, this performance would go on forever, I've no doubt. But I've had enough of it. Take her away, lock her up in her stone tomb with half a mountain for a roof, then break up the door. Let her die there if she chooses. Or if she prefers, let her stay alive at the grave. Why not? Because the grave's the only fit place for her. Solitary confinement among the dead. There's no place for her among the living.
To my grave then, my honeymoon bed, my prison, my crypt under the mountain, my home for the rest of time. I shall meet so many of my relations there. We shall all be guests of the sad-faced queen of the shadows, Persephone, in that bleak hotel that is never short of a room. I am the last, the unhappiest, I think, and the youngest, booking in too soon. But my father will be there to meet me at the door. My mother will smile and hug me close as she always did. And my brother, he will be glad to see me more than all the rest. At each fresh grave, my hand sprinkled the earth. At each, I poured the purifying water and made offerings. And for my beloved Polynikes, whose broken body I set to rest, I am rewarded with a shameful death. Not for a husband, you understand, not even for a son would I have done this. If the law had forbidden it, I would have bowed my head and let them rot. Does that make sense? I could have married again, another husband, and had more children by him if the first had died. Do you see? Do you understand me? But my mother and father are dead. There will be no more brothers, never again. My love had to speak at Polynikes' grave or nowhere. And for that terrible crime, Creon sentences me to death, drags me here, and will shut me away in my cavern under the mountain, a living death, in silence and darkness and solitude. I shall die unmarried. All those pleasures denied me. Motherhood denied me too. No children to love me, to love. And now, no friends. What moral law have I broken? What eternal truths have I denied? Yet now not even a God can help me, and there's no man who will, I'm sure of that. No help and no hope. How can there be, when common decency has become a crime? If the gods in heaven have changed their minds, and this is the way they order things now, I shall soon know it, and I shall have learned my lesson the hard way. But if some others are mistaken, let them be punished as I have been punished, and suffer the injustice that I suffer.
She hasn't changed, even now.
The fire inside of her still blows like a hurricane.
The sooner she's got rid of, shut up out of harm's way, and forgotten, the better. Get a move on, and you will regret it.
That word is my death.
Now it is spoken. Don't comfort yourself with hope. There's none.
This is the land of my fathers. Thebes, built by a god. You see, senators, my time has run out. There is no more left. I am the last of the royal blood, a daughter of kings. And I die his victim, unjustly, for upholding justice and the humanity of humankind.
Others have suffered, my child, like you.
Upon Danae, too, the same dreadful sentence was passed.
Far from the light of day, in a tower of brass, she was shut away.
In that one single room, both prison and tomb became her wedding chamber at last. Like you, she was a child of kings.
Yet in her womb, the seed of Zeus made a mockery of the brazen tower.
Fate has its own momentum. When things must be, they will be.
What use is power in the state?
Or wealth?
Massive armies?
An unsinkable fleet?
Gods make their entrances by strength or stealth.
And no tombs or towers can keep them out.
The arrogant King Lycurgus discovered wisdom when he angered Dionysus with his rage.
That proud Edonian king was punished with madness.
And long imprisoned in a rocky cell to endure the private and particular hell of lunacy, till the silence soothed and reordered his brain.
He learned there the terrible power of the god he had challenged.
Only a fool would attempt to stop the Maenads in full flight.
Or silence their ecstatic singing.
The sleep of reason is not darkness,
but another kind of light.
And where the gloomy rocks divide the seas in Thrace by the Bosporus, the savage god laughed to see the sons of Phineus blinded with the spindle.
Nothing could placate their vengeful stepmother's hate.
Her bloody needle darkened their eyes forever,
blinding the children as the gods had blinded the father.
From their mother's wedding day, their destiny was settled.
Their wasted lives they wept away in sightless misery, yet she was descended from the gods.
In the echoing caves of the north wind, she hallooed.
Man's fate is determined,
will not be denied.
The child Antigone pays for the parents' pride.
Senators of Thebes, and your new king, Creon. We have traveled together, my boy and I, sharing one pair of eyes between the two of us, which is the way blind women must make their journeys.
Tiresias, what news brings an old woman so far?
Important news that can't wait, and advice which, if you're wise, you'll listen to.
I've always listened, and acted upon it more than once.
And like a sensible captain who values his pilot, you've avoided the rocks.
I admit it. We all do. We're in your debt.
Then for God's sake, listen to me now. You're like a man balanced on a razor, likely to fall or cut himself to pieces.
Are you serious? Any man would shudder hearing such things from your lips. that have foretold so many horrors. Tell me what you mean.
Oh yes, I intend to. All my experience of forecasting the future and understanding symbols has revealed to me. I shall make plain to you. I was sitting in my usual seat, a place where I can hear the singing, the secret language of birds, and understand their meaning, when I heard, quite unexpectedly, a terrible new sound, like shrieking or cries of anguish, hysterical twittering and whistling, like the babble of a barbaric language, only capable of expressing hatred or pain. By that, and the wild beating of wings, I knew the birds were at war. Such sounds could mean nothing else. I could well imagine their blood-stained beaks and dripping claws, and that thought disturbed me deeply. At once, I went to my altar to see what I could learn from a sacrifice by fire, but nothing would burn. A filthy liquid ran from the flesh and dropped on the embers, and sizzled and bubbled among the ashes. Then the gallbladder burst, spurting stinking acid across the meat, and all the fat melted and was rendered down till the bone was left bare. I saw all this, or my boy saw it. He sees for me what my eyes cannot, just as I see things to which other people are blind. But in that filth, I read nothing. The oracle was clogged with fat and decay, and then it was revealed. I understood that you, King Creon, have decreed this filth that chokes our altars. The blood and guts that decay and stink there are the blood and guts vomited from the gullets of dogs and carrion crows. The blood of Polynices, the flesh of that unluckiest of sons of Oedipus, still unburied and affronting more than our senses smell. The gods themselves are disgusted. They reject our prayers and sacrifices. How could they do otherwise? How could the birds sing of anything but horrors, blown out with this banquet of human decay till their very beaks drip with it? My son, listen to me. Any man can make a mistake, commit a crime. The man who can recognize what he has done, see that he was mistaken or morally wrong, admit it, and put it right. That man proves that it is never too late to become wise, and no one will condemn him. But if he compounds his stupidity with stubbornness and an obstinate refusal to face facts, he is nothing but a fool. Is there anyone more stupid than the stupid man who cannot see his own stupidity? Listen to me. Bury the man. Put it right. This is good advice, sincerely offered by someone who wishes you well. Take it.
So that's your advice. Is it, old woman? I am to be the target, am I? For everyone to shoot at? Well, I am wise too. Wise to the ways of fortune tellers, and the buying and selling they all go in for. And I'm to be the latest bargain I see. I'm to be bought and sold like silver from the exchequer at Sardis, or gold from India. I'm to be part of the trade. Let me tell you this. There is not enough gold in the world to buy a grave for that man. If golden eagles were to carry him up by joints and shreds to Zeus and spew him in goblets on the marble floor of Olympus, not even that blasphemy would be enough to deflect me from my purpose. Because I know that no single human act, however much it may degrade the earth, or the men who perpetrate or suffer it, can stain the purity of the ever-living gods. But let me tell you this, Tiresias. A man can fall. He can fall like a stone, especially if she pretends to give good advice and wraps it up in a profound cloak of religiosity, when all the time naked self-interest and the greed for profit are the only motives that matter to her.
Are there any wise men left anywhere?
Goodness, how profound. Do you have any more thunderous platitudes to follow that one?
Mature judgment cannot be bought, and good advice is worth more than a fortune to any man.
And bad advice is worse than worthless, a disease which infects the wisest of men.
You describe your own symptoms exactly.
I refuse to become in a slanging match with the recognized prophet of thieves.
And yet you insult me to my face. You say my predictions are both false and dishonest.
That is because all fortune tellers are money grubbers and charlatans.
Kings too have been known to be inquisitive.
Do you realize the man you are talking to? I am the king!
You are the king! Yes! My good advice helped to make you one.
You've had your successes, I know that. You've been proved right on more than one occasion, but honesty's another matter. I never trusted you.
Don't provoke me to tell you everything. The dark waters of prophecy are better left undisturbed.
Disturb them, I don't care. Say anything at all, but say it honestly, not for money.
Are you really foolish enough to believe that money has ever been my motive?
Because my integrity is not for sale!
Listen, Creon! This is the truth. Before many more days, before the sun has risen, well, shall we say a few more times, you will have made your payment, corpse for corpse, with a child of your own blood. You have buried the one still living, the woman who moves and breathes. You have given to the grave, and the dead man you have left unwashed, unwept, and without the common courtesy of a decent covering of earth, so that both have been wronged, and the gods to whom the body justly belong are denied it and are insulted. Such matters are not for you to judge. You usurp ancient rights which even the gods themselves don't dare to question, powers which are not in the prerogative of kings. Even now, implacable avengers are on their way, the Furies, who rise up from hell and swoop down from heaven, fix their hooks onto those who commit crimes, and will never let go. The suffering you inflicted upon others will be inflicted upon you. You will suffer as they did. Have I been bribed, do you think? Am I speaking for money now? Before very long. Yes, it will be soon. There will be screaming and bitter tears and hysterical crying in this house. Men, as well as women, other cities too, other states will turn upon you for the crimes you have committed. Dogs and vultures will swarm the streets, dropping fragments of the unburied man at corners, on doorsteps, in the public squares. They will smell the pollution and turn to you, its author. That's all I have to say. You made me angry, Creon, with your crude accusations. So I made you my target. And like a good marksman, all my shots have hit the bull. You can feel them, can't you? You can feel the pain like an arrow. Here! Take me home now, boy. Leave him to entertain some younger ears than mine with his ridiculous outbursts. Either that, or let him learn mature judgment and how a wise man controls his tongue.
My lord, she's gone, promising nothing but disasters to come. In all my life, I have never known any of her prophecies to be proved wrong.
Neither have I been. I know that much as well as you. My mind's torn apart like a tug of war, one way then the other. How can I give way now? But how can I stand here and wait stubbornly for whatever disaster may be coming?
Lord Creon, it's time to take good advice.
Give it then. Don't be afraid. I'll listen.
Release the woman from her underground prison.
And give honorable burial to the dead man.
Oh, so that's your advice? Total collapse, complete withdrawal? Do you all think that?
We do, sir, and do it quickly for heaven's sake.
The gods never move faster than when punishing men with the consequences of their own actions.
How can I do it? It's unendurable to deny every action and every principle I have stood fast by. But I dare not stand against the iron laws of necessity.
Go on, sir. Do it now. Do it personally, not by proxy, with your own hands.
Yes. I'll do it, myself, at once. Somebody, everybody, bring spades and sledgehammers out onto the mountain. I'm coming with you. If I've changed my mind, I'll do it with exactly the same determination. Tear down the bricks with my own hands if necessary.
Bacchus, Dionysus, in Italy revered, praised, and feared. This is your native city, where the quiet river of its menace waters the meadows. Your own Thebes, where the dragon's teeth were sown. The whole world worships you, on the two-pronged mountain where the torches glitter, and the nymphs are Parnassus dance, by the pool where Castalia's suicide made the fountain magical, and the cool waters of prophecy reside. In the Theban streets, hail, we shout, Bacchus, hail, and the city waits. Your mother Semele died here, incinerated by the fire of the universe, Zeus, in his splendor. Now in your city, another disaster threatens. Fear locks up our tongues, and like a plague sore on the face, the state's disease is made public. We have done wrong. Now the first necessity is for healing. From Parnassus' rocky screes or over the sighing waters of the endless seas. Come to us, healer, and heal. We have suffered too long. All the stars of the galaxy whose hearts are fire, and the remote voices of measureless night that speak from the depths of their misery. Come, authentic son of Zeus, bring delight, bring rest, bring peace, bring healing and rebirth. Let our anguish cease. Ecstatic God, whose many names are one.
Liebe uns Jesus, liebe uns Jesus, liebe uns
Senators, descendants of Cadmus who founded our city, and Amphion who built it. Good people of Thebes, no man's life ever moves smoothly according to plan. Who can make judgments and say this is praiseworthy in human existence, and this is to be despised, when chance rules everything? One moment, a man rides high on his fortune, and the same moment he crashes to the depths. Luck, like the tide, is certain to ebb after the flow, and no man can tell what will happen tomorrow. Everyone surely envied Creon. He saved his country from its enemies. He's taken power as king, and his position in the state was unchallenged. What's more, he ruled well with a firm hand, and his son was by his side to help him succeed. All that is over now. But what life can there be when the things that make life pleasant are all destroyed? A kind of death, moving and breathing, but not living. That's how it is for him. Of course he's rich beyond accounting. He's a king still, with all the pomp and circumstance that rank implies. But what's it worth when all the joy of life is gone? A shadow, a mockery, a vulgar pageant. Who can take pleasure in wealth or power when all happiness is dead in his heart?
More tragedy for this family? Tell us your news.
They're both dead, and the living must take the blame.
Who killed them?
Who's dead?
What happened? Tell us.
The king's son Haman, a royal blood shed by a royal hand.
His father's, you mean, or his own?
His own held the sword, but his father's actions drove it home.
The prophet warned us, and it all came true.
The doors are opening. Look, here's Eurydice. Poor woman, Creon's wife.
Does she know you, think? Has she come here by chance? Because she's heard rumors about her son.
Gentlemen, good friends, my ears caught something of what you were saying. A few words as I opened the door. I have just come back from offering prayers to Pallas Athene. We had just drawn back the bolts when I caught a few scraps of your conversation. Enough to make me fear what all mothers fear. An accident, or some disaster to those we love. I almost fainted. My ladies-in-waiting caught me in their arms. Please, speak it out plainly, whatever it is, I can bear it. We are bred to stoicism in this family.
Dear Queen, whom we all respect, we were there, we saw it all, and we'll tell you exactly how it happened.
There is no point in trying to soften the blow now, only to be proved a liar later.
It's best to tell the truth. I went with the king, your husband, to the edge of the battlefield, where we saw the body of Polynices, still lying where he had fallen, in a terrible state. The dogs had been at him.
So we prayed. First to Hecate, who wants crossroads and tombs, and the scenes of crimes committed. but not atoned for, and then to Pluto, king of the dead.
We ask them to have pity on him and on us, and not to be angry.
Then we washed him, or what was left of him, with holy water, cut fresh branches to make a pyre, and burned the remains.
Then we shoveled a mound of his own Theban earth over the ashes. And when we had finished, we hurried off as fast as we could to the prison cell, furnished with stones that served as a bridal suite for the girl married to death.
But before we arrived, one of the soldiers, with the unenviable job of guarding that god-forsaken place, came running back to tell the king that he heard a terrible noise, like screaming from inside the mountain.
And as Creon got nearer, he heard it too, faint but audible, a kind of weird sobbing or moaning, low and unearthly, as the grief were speaking its own naked language.
The king groaned aloud, and we all heard him say, "Oh God, this is what I was afraid of. Am I a prophet too? This path up to the tomb, these last few steps, are the most agonizing journey I shall ever make. I can hear my son's voice in there. You, quickly, guards, anybody, get inside, squeeze between the rocks, where somebody has already forced an entrance, get into the main chamber of the cave, and tell me whether it's my son's voice I recognized, or if the gods are playing some brutal game with me."
So we went in and looked, as the half-crazed king had told us to. And in the darkest corner we saw her, strung up by the neck, hanging from an improvised rope of twisted linen strips, torn from her own dress. Haman was right beside her, cuddling her body.
As it dangled there, sobbing broken-heartedly at his wife's death, and the marriage bad luck, and his father's cruelty had made certain would never take place.
When Creon saw them, he staggered into the cave, groaning like an animal, and sobbed aloud,
"My boy, my poor boy, what have you done? And then, have you gone mad coming here? There's nothing here for you but death and annihilation and despair. Come away from there, my son. Come out. For God's sake, I'm begging you. Come away."
But the boy just looked at him, and his eyes were terrifying with an anger like I've never seen before. Without a word, he spat in his father's face and drew his sword and lunged straight for the old man.
But Creon was quick and skipped out of distance, and the poor lad, hysterical with grief and self-disgust, held his sword at arm's length and plunged it between his own ribs.
And then, still conscious, he lifted the girl down into the crook of his own arms and cradled her there in his own blood. His breathing got harder and shorter as his life flooded away before our eyes, like a fountain, soaking her body so that her white cheeks flushed red again with the blood stain.
So now they're together. Two corpses join in death. He got his marriage, poor lad, but it was solemnized in the grave where there are no celebrations.
They look like honeymooners, quietly sleeping side by side in one bed. Evidence of the havoc man can bring upon man by his own pig-headedness and arrogance.
That's strange. What do you make of it?
His wife has gone without a word, giving no indication of her own feelings one way or the other.
She'd never do anything foolish or indiscreet. I'm sure of it. She's far too sensible.
I don't know. Her silence was unnerving, dangerously unlike what one would expect. That silence is sometimes more threatening than screaming and tears.
I'll go in after her.
You're right. The silence was unnerving. She seemed to feel nothing, and in my experience, that could be dangerous.
Look there!
The king is coming.
But not alone. A silent witness comes before him, dead as stone, unspeaking evidence that the grief, like the crime, was all his own.
He suffers now for his wrongdoing.
King, there was hatred inside me. The urge to destroy drove me like a maniac, an insane plunge towards death. Your death, my boy. See here the killer and his victim. See here the father and his son. I was responsible. My actions killed him. There is no blame for him. None. Blasted in the morning of your life. My hope, my joy, my hand powered the knife, my arrogance determined your fate.
You see the truth now. You see it too late.
Suffering is the only teacher. The gods have broken my back, whipped me like a beast up this stony track. All pleasure, all rejoicing, they have turned to anguish and weeping.
My lord, you have suffered enough, but more suffering is marked in your name. When agony lies here in the open, another is waiting, the same anguish redoubled behind the door.
There can be nothing worse, my heart is broken.
Your wife is dead, the mother of this slaughtered son. Her wound is fresh, but the breath of life is gone.
Hades is deep, bottomless the abyss of the dead. Will you kill me too? Or bring me to my knees to suffer longer, beating my head insensible with pain? A few moments ago, my trembling arms embraced a dead son. Now death has snatched the mother from my hands.
It was there by the household shrine she collapsed, still holding the razor-sharp knife.
And as darkness drew down its slow blinds and her eyes began to close, she spoke of Megarius, who died in the fullness of his youth, her elder boy.
By his empty bed she wept, and for the son whose life ended today, and with her last, dying breath, cursed you as his murderer, who drove him to this death.
I'm shaking. I shall go mad with this terror. There must be a sword somewhere, a sharp two-edged knife to cut away at my life. How did she die? Did she do it alone?
She heard them weeping for Haman, cried aloud, and pierced herself under the heart with a sword.
She spoke the truth. All the guilt is mine. I am the murderer. Make that plain. Somebody, anybody, take me away. I disgrace the decent light of day. I am nothing now. I have become nothing. Nothing can happen to a man who is nothing.
How can we judge for the best in times like these?
Take me then. The man who killed, without knowing it, his wife and son. Where shall I go then? Into the night. Darkness hide me. There's blood on my hands. My head is split. My back is broken. I should be dead.
The key to human happiness is to nurture wisdom in your heart.
For man to attend to man's business, and let the gods play their part.
Above all, to stand in awe of the eternal, unalterable law.
The proud man may pretend in his arrogance to despise everything but himself.
In the end, the gods will bring him to grief.
Today it has happened here.
With our own eyes, we have seen an old man, through suffering, become wise.